Do you ever feel like you're putting in all this effort learning English, listening to stuff, maybe podcasts, watching videos, but it just feels like you're kind of stuck?
Oh, yeah.
Like the words are just
Uh,
washing over you, and you're not really making the progress you want.
that feeling is so common
Hmm.
and honestly really frustrating. You feel like you're doing the right things, putting the time in, getting exposure, but it's not sticking.
Exactly. Not translating into like better understanding or actually using new words.
Right.
And that specific challenge is actually why one of our listeners sent us a whole bunch of source materials. They wanted to figure out, how to make practice, especially with audio, actually work.
Yeah, make it count. So for this deep dive, that's our mission. We're digging into these sources, and they're quite varied. Academic studies, articles from language sites, even forum chats, to pull out the really key practical ideas. We want to cut through the noise and help you figure out how to turn all that listening into real, tangible English progress.
Okay, fantastic. Welcome, by the way, to our English learning podcast channel, Daily English Practice, Listen and Speak. Today, we're exploring how to practice English.
Let's dive in.
So where do we start? The sources all seem to agree that authentic audio, things like podcasts, are, well, really valuable tools.
Absolutely. They're described as like a window into real-life language.
Yeah.
Not the simplified stuff you sometimes get in textbooks.
Right, not filtered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Podcasts give you that exposure to natural speed, the way people actually pronounce things, idioms, the real flow of conversation. Sources like Thinking in English in an academic journal, IGF, they really stress this point.
And it helps with, well, pretty much everything, doesn't it? Listening skills, obviously, but also getting that rhythm, intonation.
Pronunciation, too.
Yeah.
And what's cool, as a few sources pointed out, is just the sheer variety of topics. I mean,
Yeah.
everything from daily life, culture, travel, shopping,
Mm-hmm.
to science, history,
Mm-hmm.
even get this, robot puppies. Seriously.
Robot puppies. Okay, see, that proves it. You can learn English talking about literally anything that interests you.
Right, and that's the key insight. It's not just that there's variety, but why it matters. Someone on Reddit made a great point. Listening to podcasts on topics you genuinely care about, but in English, it changes everything.
How so?
It stops feeling like homework, like a chore.
Yeah.
It becomes, entertainment that you're also learning from. It blends the two.
That makes so much sense. If you love, say, history, listening to a history podcast in English is way more engaging than forcing yourself through some random textbook chapter. The motivation is baked in.
Totally. But, and this is the big but that the sources immediately bring up, just having it playing in the background often isn't enough.
Ah, okay. Back to that feeling of being stuck.
Exactly. Not enough for really boosting your vocabulary or understanding things deeply, for many people anyway.
So all those hours listening while driving or doing chores might not be doing as much heavy lifting as we think.
Precisely. Sources like Leonardo English and Thinking in English tackle this head on. They talk about listening while you're distracted, driving, cleaning, whatever.
Yeah.
Your brain might pick up the gist, maybe, but it's not actively grappling with the language itself, the vocabulary.
And it go in one ear and out the other.
That's the phrase they use.
Yeah.
And this leads straight into a really crucial distinction the sources make. Passive versus active learning.
Okay, passive versus active. Let's unpack that.
So passive listening is that background stuff, the podcast playing while you do other things. It's good for exposure, definitely. Getting a feel for the sounds, the rhythm over time. Useful, but...
But it's not where the deep learning happens.
Right. That's not where you actively acquire and remember new words or complex structures.
And I have to admit, most of my listening probably falls into that passive category. It's just easier to fit in.
And that's okay. Consistent exposure is valuable. But as Thinking in English points out, most learners spend the vast majority of their time listening passively. And the sources are pretty unanimous. Active listening is the key to making real, faster progress, especially for vocabulary and really understanding things.
Okay, so if passive isn't cutting it, what does active listening actually involve? What practical things can you do?
Great question. The sources offer some really concrete techniques. First off, think about your environment.
Right.
Leonardo English is very direct about this. The best way, sit down, no distractions, phone off, other tabs closed, ideally pen and paper ready, or maybe a notes app.
Okay, so focus time, not trying to learn complex phrases while, I don't know, cooking dinner.
Exactly. Contrast that focus session with trying to figure out tricky grammar while you're stuck in traffic. It's a different world.
Definitely. What about transcripts? Lots of podcasts offer them now. How do they fit into active listening?
Transcripts are a fantastic tool, but how you use them is key. Several sources, Thinking in English, Reddit, Zap, English, suggest a specific strategy.
Which is?
Listen first without the transcript, maybe even twice.
Okay, just listen.
Yeah. Force your brain to work purely with the audio. Focus on the sounds, the context clues. It's like exercising your listening muscles directly.
That makes sense. If you read along immediately, you're leaning on reading, just listening.
Precisely. So after you've done that initial listen, then bring out the transcript. Read it while listening again, or just read it through afterwards.
And that's for?
Checking your understanding, seeing the actual words you heard, or maybe words you missed entirely. It clarifies things, confirms what you got right, fills in the gaps. And yeah, lots of podcasts provide free transcripts, which is great.
Okay, got it. Listen first, then check with the transcript. And you mentioned pen and paper. Note-taking. What should you actually write down? Every single unfamiliar word. That sounds like a lot.
Good point. Not necessarily every single word. Thinking in English and Leonardo English suggest focusing your note-taking, especially on vocabulary. And Leonardo English has this really useful idea they call second category vocabulary.
Second category vocabulary. What's that?
It's not words you've literally never seen before. It's more like words you kind of recognize, but you wouldn't use yourself confidently.
Ah, okay. Like you know it when you see it, but it's not in your active toolkit.
Exactly. Or maybe it's a word you know, but it's used in a new context, a different way. Or phrasal verbs, idioms, figurative language.
Right, like you know pick and you know up, but maybe I need to pick up Spanish quickly. Uses pick up in a way you need to note down, meaning to learn.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
Or maybe a common word used metaphorically. Those are the gems to capture the words and phrases just on the edge of becoming your active vocabulary. Jot those down.
But why does writing them down make such a big difference? Why not just, I don't know, highlight them on a digital transcript?
This is where Leonardo English, citing academic research, has that real aha moment. They explain the science behind why physically writing works so well.
Okay.
It engages multiple senses and memory pathways at once. You hear the word, you see it either on the transcript or as you write it, and you use your motor memory, the physical act of writing.
So it's auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, like muscle memory.
Exactly. You're lighting up more parts of your brain connected to that word or phrase. And the research they mentioned suggests this multisensory thing makes you like 10 to 15 times more likely to remember it compared to just hearing it passively.
Wow, 10 to 15 times. Seriously.
Seriously. They even note a native speaker might need over 20 passive exposures to really learn a new word. Note-taking is like hitting the fast-forward button on getting it into your long-term memory.
That single statistic makes the effort of writing seem totally worth it. That's a huge difference, a real game changer for vocab building.
Isn't it? It shows the effort isn't just more work, it's vastly more effective work. Now, another active technique the sources bring up is shadowing.
Shadowing, I've heard of it, but what does it actually entail?
Thinking in English describes it pretty clearly. You listen to the audio, and you try to speak the words at the exact same time as the speaker.
Like literally talking along with them.
Yeah, or maybe just a split second behind. You're trying to mimic everything, their pronunciation, the rhythm, the intonation, the speed, as closely as you can.
So you're shadowing their voice, like an echo that's almost simultaneous.
That's the core idea. Leonardo English suggests a process. Maybe listen normally first, then listen while reading the transcript to really get it, then try shadowing. Repeat the words right after or along with the speaker.
That sounds challenging, but I can see how it would really help with sounding more natural, getting the flow right.
Absolutely. It trains your mouth, your tongue, your brain to produce those English sounds and rhythms more automatically. It builds fluency and confidence.
Okay, so note-taking, shadowing.
Yeah.
Any other active techniques?
Yes, using writing to check and consolidate what you've learned. Thinking in English, for instance, recommends writing a summary.
A summary of the podcast episode or section you just listened to.
Exactly. After you've done your active listening, maybe taken some notes, try to write down the main points in your own words.
That does a couple things at once, doesn't it? Checked if you actually understood, and it
Right.
forces you to practice writing and use any new vocabulary you just picked up. You have to paraphrase, maybe use those second category words.
Precisely. It's really efficient. They also mentioned transcribing, writing down the audio word for word as a more intensive exercise. Really good for focusing on detail.
Okay, summarizing sounds like a great way to tie listening, understanding, and active recall together.
It really does. And speaking of powerful methods, there's repetition. One academic study found via the AirEye database looked specifically at using repetition with podcasts for English learners.
Oh, interesting. What did that study find?
It worked with learners around the A2B1 level, so sort of lower intermediate, and it found that using a specific repetition technique, basically, listening to the same bit of audio multiple times led to a significant measurable improvement in their listening comprehension scores.
So re-listening isn't just boring or pointless, it actually works.
The data showed it worked, yeah. Their scores after using repetition were clearly better than before. The study links this to basic memory ideas, like the forgetting curve and something called strength theory, essentially. Each repetition strengthens the memory trace in your brain.
So it's not just hearing it again, it's reinforcing the neural pathways for understanding it.
That's the idea. And interestingly, the students in the study, they were apparently quite happy with the technique.
Really? They didn't find it tedious?
Apparently not overall. The study reported high satisfaction. They felt it was practical, they could see it helping their test results, and they liked being able to review as many times as needed until they felt they got it. The positive results probably made it feel worthwhile.
That makes sense. If you see something is actually improving your skills, you're more motivated to stick with it. Okay, so let's try and bring all these ideas together. What's the big picture takeaway for using podcasts or audio effectively?
I think the core message, consistent across all these different sources, is about combining consistency with dedicated, active effort. Passive listening has its place, great for exposure.
But it's not enough on its own for big leaps in progress.
Exactly. You need to carve out some time for focused, active practice sessions to really drive forward your comprehension and especially your vocabulary.
So it's not an either situation, passive or active. It's more like both hand.
I think that's the best way to look at it. Use passive listening like a wide net, just catching ambient language exposure throughout your day. But then have your dedicated active listening sessions, like focused fishing trips, where you target specific things, new words, tricky grammar, pronunciation, and really work on them. Thinking in English and Leonardo English both seem to advocate for that kind of balanced approach.
Got it. Are there any last little tips from the sources, maybe about using the podcast player itself?
Yeah, Thinking in English mentions using built-in features, like the speed control. Slow it down if it's too fast at first.
Or speed it up later for a challenge?
Right. And downloading episodes for offline listening can be good too. It just helps avoid getting distracted by other things online.
And the sources do acknowledge that real, authentic English can be hard, right? It's not always easy.
Oh, absolutely. The IGS source, for example, mentions challenges like complex vocabulary, idioms, fast speech. But the whole point of these active techniques, repetition, using transcripts after listening, targeted note-taking, is that they give you the tools to tackle those challenges.
So the difficulties aren't roadblocks. They're actually the things these strategies help you overcome.
Exactly. They turn those tricky moments into specific learning opportunities. You identify the problem, you focus on it, you break it down.
Okay, this deep dive has definitely clarified things for me. The main takeaway seems crystal clear. Passive listening is fine for general exposure, but if you want real, noticeable improvement, especially with vocabulary and deep understanding, you have to combine it with active techniques.
That's it. Taking that focused time, using transcripts smartly. After listening, first writing down those second category words that research shows helps memory so much, maybe repeating tough sections, summarizing.
These aren't just extra tasks, they're research-backed ways to actually accelerate your learning.
It's about being deliberate, being intentional, turning listening from something that just happens in the background into a proactive study method, even if it's just, say, 15 or 30 minutes, a few times a week.
So we really hope you listening will take some of these ideas and, experiment. Try one or two of these active techniques this week. See how it feels. See what difference it makes to your learning.
Yeah, find what clicks for you. And maybe here's a final thought to chew on. Looking at how you listen to English now, what's one specific change, one active technique you could try this week to start turning more of that English you hear into English you actually know and can't use?